Okay, so here I am in the dark again. I don't have makeup on or anything like that. So. I decided to make cloaked in darkness video blog. I wanted to talk a little bit about Venus in transit and how a lot of people are saying it's like the starting point for the Mayan calendar in 2012 and stuff like that. And I don't want to get into anything technical, but I just wanted to say that Venus being the goddess of love and being a goddess in general, a lot of people talk about sort of a spiritual shift that has been going on since, I don't know, 2008 or something. But for a while now, maybe longer, I mean maybe past 10 years or something, people have been feeling sort of this very strong spiritual shift. And it makes me think back to when my sort of spiritual awakening started. And it really just started with this very strong sort of calling or impulse towards the feminine aspect of God and the divine feminine, the goddess, and this huge goddess energy that just sort of came into my awareness. I think prior to that, I didn't have like necessarily atheist leanings, but just sort of, I mean, my concept of the divine wasn't necessarily completely masculine, but I didn't have a very I had never really thought of the feminine aspect of God until maybe around 2002, 2003. And at that point, again, there was just this strong energy that I became aware of that, at least in my mind, like there's no way that it could have been anything other than this goddess energy. And I mean, I won't say specifically what I think it was in this video, but I'll get into that eventually. But I think that this age that we're moving into, and a lot of people talk about this. I mean, there's been so many books written about this, that sort of the age of Aquarius, this new sort of spiritual age, is going to be the return of the divine feminine. And I think I hadn't really given it that much thought, because I was like, well, she didn't really go anywhere. Like it's like she's been here, but it's not so much her return as it is her return into a cultural setting, her return into the lives of, I think, regular people, where we've been in sort of this patriarchal. I don't think that, maybe historically we've been in a patriarchal society, but I don't think that our society is any more or less patriarchal than it has ever been. Just that our concept of God, at least for most people, is completely masculine. And even those who ascribe to the idea that there's a feminine aspect of God, it's kind of like that feminine aspect way over there, you know, that doesn't really matter in the scheme of things. And I think in everything it has to be balanced, and I think that there's a feminine and masculine aspect to human beings and to the soul. And so I think that's on a microcosmic level. So on a macrocosmic level, there would have to be the same thing, I would think. So I think that this return of the divine feminine is and why I think that the Venus transit has something to do with it, because I think it has been going on for a long time, but I think that now is the time when people on like a mass scale are just going to be feeling that energy and accepting that energy. And it's something, and going back to my experience, it's like, not that I would have utterly rejected that energy, that goddess energy, but just that at where my head was at that time, it was kind of like, it's a completely different energy than what you would normally prescribe to the divine. It feels bigger, like there's a weight to it. There's an otherworldliness to it. It just seems more ancient. I mean, it's kind of like, the only way I can describe it is when you go to the ocean, like if you were at the beach like at night and you were looking out at like the vastness of the ocean and you feel that power, and it's a good feeling, but it's an awe-inspiring feeling, but it's also kind of a scary feeling that I don't think most people get. I mean, I know in Christianity there's that whole element of the fear, like, of God, which has to do with like respecting God, and it's kind of the same thing, but it's not even so much that you're like, oh gosh, the goddess. It's more like you feel her power, and you feel so minuscule in comparison to that power, but you also feel really connected to it. And I think that was my experience. I felt the sort of, big mama love thing that a lot of people feel when it comes to the goddess, but I also felt the power. And I think that, and that's why the whole sort of the feminine aspect of God being sort of shoved to the side as if she doesn't matter. It's like when you feel that power, you realize, wow, like, that's crazy. Like, she's like such a huge part of what makes up God that it's almost ridiculous that she's been shoved to one side for so long. So I think that the whole Venus transit thing is the beginning of a shift towards accepting the divine aspect of God on a mass scale, and putting her back into our language, our thought processes, our literature, our just in the media, like just on a bigger scale than what she's been. I mean, feminist studies and things like that have been talking about this for years. And it's not so much, one is better than the other. Again, it's about balance, and I think that we have to become more attuned to our heart chakras, and more attuned to our intuitive abilities, and she's a part of that. Like, I don't think we can really get into that, really come into that realm of thinking without accepting her. And I know even for me, like, I used to be very sort of intellectual, very rational, and I wasn't very intuitive, and I'm still not where I want to be intuitively, but I think that I've grown into a more intuitive person because of my acceptance of this feminine aspect, whatever you would call her. I don't know if, it's one being, one entity. I mean, I think, I'm a firm sort of believer in, there's the source, which is, I guess, God, for lack of a better word. I don't know the etymology of God. I don't know why that word is the only word we associate with this force. But I think that there is a source to everything, and that everything else sort of emanated out of that, and that those emanations, I mean, you can call them the gods, you can call them, I don't know, ascended masters, aliens, whatever you want to call them, like angels. But there are feminine entities. But I think even in the source, since the source is everything and nothing, I think that the feminine aspect is part of that too. So I think, yeah, I think that this new age, if we're going to move into it, we have to be more attuned to these feminine energies. And I think that the Venus transit was the beginning of that.